It was a night like any other in Gotham, cold, dark, and unforgiving. The clouds above hung low, threatening rain, and the streets were alive with the hum of crime. Somewhere in the shadows, Batman lurked, moving like a specter through the alleys of his city. His cape fluttered with the faint breeze as he crouched atop a gargoyle, his eyes scanning the chaos below. For years, Gotham had been his responsibility, his curse. No one understood the weight he carried, the burden of ensuring justice in a city so full of corruption. His life was one of solitude, a never-ending mission to protect the people who would never know his name. He didn't ask for gratitude. He didn't need it. All that mattered was the mission. But in the back of his mind, even on the coldest nights, the loneliness would creep in. He could never let it consume him, for weakness was a luxury he couldn't afford. Across the world, on an island hidden from the eyes of man, a different kind of warrior stood at the edge of a cliff. Diana, known to the world as Wonder Woman, gazed out over the ocean, her heart heavy with the knowledge that danger was looming. She had been raised among warriors, trained to protect the world from the threats of gods and monsters. Yet even she felt the weight of her responsibilities growing heavier with each passing day. The world of man had always fascinated her, their capacity for cruelty, for war, but also for love, for hope. Diana had seen it all, and it was that hope that drew her back to the world outside her paradise. There were threats that could not be ignored, forces that could plunge the world into darkness if left unchecked. And now, her path led her to Gotham, a place of darkness, a place of shadows. She had heard of the man who ruled the night there, the one they called the Dark Knight. He was unlike any other hero she had known. Where others fought in the light, he fought in the dark. Where others sought connection, he kept his distance. Batman was a mystery to her, but Diana had never shied away from mysteries. And in her heart, she knew that their paths were destined to cross. Their first encounter was not in the quiet of the night, but in the heat of battle. A new threat had come to Gotham, something darker than even Batman had anticipated. The League of Shadows, an ancient organization bent on plunging the world into chaos, had set their sights on Gotham. And for the first time in a long while, Batman found himself facing enemies that even he could not handle alone. That's when she appeared. Out of the sky, with the grace of a goddess and the fury of a storm, Wonder Woman descended into the fray. Her lasso of truth crackled with golden light as it wrapped around the enemies surrounding Batman. In one swift motion, she pulled them to the ground, her strength undeniable, her presence commanding. Batman's eyes narrowed beneath his cowl as he watched her fight. She moved with the precision of a warrior, yet there was a certain elegance to her, a lightness that contrasted with the darkness he was so accustomed to. In her, he saw not just power, but hope. And in that moment, he knew that their fates were intertwined. After the battle, they stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. The rain had begun to fall, the droplets glistening in the dim light of Gotham's skyline. Batman, ever the silent guardian, kept his distance, his eyes fixed on the streets below. But Wonder Woman was not one to be ignored. "You fight alone," she said, her voice strong but gentle, cutting through the silence. "But you don't have to." Batman's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Diana stepped closer, her eyes softening as she looked at him. "I know what it's like to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, to feel as though you're the only one standing between the people and the darkness. But even the strongest of us need allies, Bruce." At the sound of his name, Batman's eyes flickered toward her. Few people ever used his real name. It was a reminder of the man beneath the mask, the man who had suffered so much, the man who had vowed never to let anyone close again. "I don't need help," he said, his voice low and gravelly. But Diana smiled, undeterred. "Everyone needs help, even the Dark Knight." Over the next few weeks, Batman and Wonder Woman found themselves fighting side by side more often. The threats to Gotham grew, as did their partnership. But it wasn't just in battle that their bond deepened. In the quiet moments between the chaos, they found themselves talking. At first, it was about strategy, about the enemies they faced. But soon the conversation shifted. Diana would ask him about his past, about the tragedy that had shaped him into the man he was today. At first, Batman was reluctant to share. He had spent years building walls around himself, walls so thick not even the closest members of the Justice League could break through. But there was something about Wonder Woman that made him feel different. She understood him in a way no one else did. She didn't push him to open up, but her presence alone was enough to make him question the life he had chosen. She was light where he was dark. She was hope where he was despair, and in her, he saw the possibility of something he had long since given up on. One night, after a particularly brutal fight, they found themselves back on the rooftop, the city quiet below them. Batman was bruised and bloodied, but Wonder Woman's hand rested gently on his shoulder, her eyes full of concern. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said softly. Batman turned away, his cape billowing in the wind. "I have to. Gotham needs me." Diana shook her head. "Gotham will always need you. But you can't do this alone, Bruce. You don't have to." For a long moment, there was silence. Batman stood still, his mind racing. He had always been alone. It was the only way he knew how to survive. But as he looked at Diana, at her strength, her compassion, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be alone anymore. But love, Batman knew, was dangerous. It made you vulnerable. It gave your enemies something to use against you. And for Batman, vulnerability was the ultimate weakness. As the days passed, the tension between them grew. Batman found himself torn between his duty to Gotham and his growing feelings for Diana. He had never allowed himself to feel this way before, and it scared him. But Wonder Woman was unyielding. She believed in him, in the man behind the mask. And she wasn't afraid to fight for what she believed in. One night, after a particularly brutal battle against the League of Shadows, Batman finally let his guard down. In the dim light of the Batcave, he stood before Diana, his mask removed, his face etched with pain and exhaustion. "I can't," he whispered, his voice raw. "I can't let myself feel this. Not now. Not ever." Diana stepped closer, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're not alone, Bruce. You never have been. You just have to let yourself believe it." For a moment, Batman looked into her eyes, seeing the truth she spoke of. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to hope. Their love wasn't easy. It was tested by the darkness that surrounded them, by the battles they fought both outside and within. But in the end, it was their love that made them stronger. Together, they faced the enemies of Gotham side by side, their bond unbreakable. Batman, the Dark Knight who had once sworn to live in solitude, had found something he never thought possible: a partner, an equal, someone who could see beyond the darkness and bring him into the light. And Wonder Woman, the warrior of Themyscira, had found in Batman not just a hero, but a man, flawed, scarred, but filled with a strength and resilience that she admired more than anything. Together, they fought for justice. Together, they found love in the unlikeliest of places. And together, they proved that even in the darkest of nights, there is always a glimmer of light. In Gotham, where shadows reign and chaos rules, two warriors stood tall, one of darkness, one of light, both fighting for justice, both searching for something more, and together, they found it.